Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the shadowy world of one of the most thankless jobs in history, the medieval executioner. You stand at the edge of a wooden platform, the crowd murmuring with a mix of dread and curiosity. The morning mist hasn't lifted yet, and already you can smell the iron tang of old blood dried into the timber. The gallows creaks in the breeze, ropes swaying like lazy serpents. Someone spits on the ground near your boot. A child stares. A priest makes the sign of the cross, not for you, of course, but for the man kneeling at your feet. You're holding an axe. Not a dainty ceremonial one, but a real heavy slab of metal affixed to a long hickory handle. Your hands know its weight like a baker knows dough. And like a baker, your work is visible to everyone in town. Unlike a baker, your customers don't come back. You probably won't survive this job, not because of angry mobs, though they're definitely a thing, but because it eats away at you. Slowly, quietly, like rot under paint. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I'm always curious how far these sleepy stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through muddy cobblestones toward the scaffold, the morning air thick with the promise of rain. A few townspeople gather early, some hoping for justice, others just in it for the drama. You recognize a few faces. That's the worst part. The woman selling apples once offered you a free one, eyes lowered. The butcher once whispered thanks for sparing his cousin's son. They all look at you now as if they've never met you. And maybe that's true. No one meets the executioner, they just witness him. You climb the steps. Slowly. Always slowly. The prisoner follows stumbling hands, bound a priest, murmuring Latin behind him like a lullaby of doom. The guard hands you the parchment name crime method. It's not like you get creative. You're not a chef improvising recipes. You're more like a grim technician. Follow the instructions, deliver the outcome. This one's a thief. Took bread during a famine. Third offense. Hanging. You adjust the noose, checking the knot like a craftsman. If you get it wrong, the neck doesn't snap cleanly. It strangles slowly. The crowd hates that. So do you. You whisper a few words, nothing poetic, just habit. Maybe it's for them, maybe it's for you. The platform creaks. You nod to the bailiff. The lever clunks. A sharp drop. A collective inhale from the crowd. You don't look down. You never look down. Historians still argue whether executioners truly felt remorse or if they grew numb from necessity. You're somewhere in between. The job doesn't get easier. You just get better at pretending it's not eating you alive. You descend from the platform and wipe your hands on your apron. A boy offers you a crust of bread. You smile, wave him off. His mother yanks him back, eyes wide. "Don't talk to that man," she hisses. That man. You wonder if there's a different you beneath the hood, beneath the apron, stained in other people's last moments. A version that gardens, or paints, or writes silly songs about turnips. But here you're just what they need, a cleaner of society's messes. Not a person, a function. A whisper follows you wherever you go, sometimes literal. People lower their voices when you pass or cross themselves or spit twice for protection. You've heard children say your touch burns the soul right out of your body, as if the axe absorbs spirits and leaks them through your skin. And yet they always come to watch. There's no theatre in town, no puppet shows this week. So the town square becomes the stage, and you unpaid actor unwilling star must deliver a chilling performance, even when it rains, even when your joints ache, even when the condemned is a pregnant girl who stole herbs to ease her pain. Some say the role of executioner was assigned to criminals offered a chance at pardon. Others say it was passed from father to son, a bloodline drenched in law and silence. You just know you ended up here, Whether by blood or bargain doesn't really matter now. You eat alone, always, not because you want to. The tavern keeps your plate near the door. The innkeeper doubles your rate. You bathe in the river when no one's watching. Sometimes not even then. But there are moments, strange, sharp slivers of clarity when someone nods. Quietly, respectfully, a soldier, a judge, a midwife who's seen her own share of bleeding. It's not praise, just recognition. Like two people who know what it's like to be hated for doing the work no one else dares touch. There's something ancient about your footsteps echoing through damp alleys, lanterns swinging at your side. Something older than law, older than gallows solder, even than the stories they'll tell about you. And tonight, after the body is buried and the town square is washed clean, you return to your small shack outside the walls. Ravens caw on the crossbeam. You hang your axe above the hearth. It glints faintly in the firelight. You pour stale ale into a wooden cup. Sit. Wait for sleep that may or may not come. The next job arrives at dawn. The next morning doesn't ask your permission. It simply arrives grey and sullen, dragging with it a knock at the door. You already know what it means before you even rise. The guard doesn't make eye contact. He never does. He hands over a folded parchment, your schedule for the week. 4 names, 2 hangings, 1 branding, and a beheading on Sunday. Great. Just in time for church. You sigh and close the door behind you, careful not to let the damp wind follow you in. The shack you call home creaks under the weight of the season. A rat scurries along the rafter. The roof leaks just a little. No one wants the executioner living near the good folk inside the town walls, so your official residence is out here among the willows and the foxes and the bones no one bothers to collect. Back in town, the fair is setting up. Wooden stalls groan under wheels of cheese and bolts of wool. Jesters juggle turnips for laughs. Lovers sneak kisses behind barrels. You blend into this scene like a hammer in a jewelry shop. People know what you are, and even if they need you, they never want to be near you. Here's the paradox of your life. You are indispensable and untouchable, needed and loathed, a permanent outsider. You were never officially trained. There's no executioner academy, no seminars on efficient garroting. You learned from watching, from trial and error, from whispered advice given in back rooms by men whose eyes never lifted from their cups. You practiced on sacks of grain, on pigs on meat, and then on people. You still remember your first, a forger, young, shaking, just like you. You missed the first swing. It landed too far back on the skull. The second broke bone. The third made the crowd groan. The fourth, that one worked. Barely. And you vomited behind the platform before anyone could thank you for your service. No one did. There's no applause at the end of your workday, just a lingering smell that follows you home and into your dreams. You do, however, get paid. Sometimes. And more than the average peasant, to be fair. But your coins come with curses. Merchants hesitate to take them. Inns ask for double. It's as if your money carries a trace of death in its metal. You spend mostly in secret trading through your brother or a boy who doesn't know better. And yet, they need you. Always. When a noble demands justice, you're the one summoned. When rumors of witches swirl, they look to you to close the story with a fire and a scream. When the city council wants to prove their authority, they send someone to your door with a name, a time, and the kind of expression that says, "Don't ask questions." The irony. You have rules. There's an unwritten code passed between executioners like folklore. Don't flinch, don't gloat, don't talk to the condemned unless they speak first. Never show joy in the act. Never cry afterward. And whatever you do, never drink before a job. That one took you a while to learn. You remember that time in March? A thief who turned out to be no thief at all. A political favor gone wrong. You did your part, but the town knew, and you knew. And that night the silence after was unbearable. You drank a lot. You missed a job the next morning. A warning came, not from the council, from the people. Someone smeared ash on your door, a reminder that even monsters can be replaced. Historians still argue whether executioners were respected in any meaningful way. Some point to the occasional privileges, tax exemptions, land grants, access to court records. Others argue these were bribes to keep you obedient and quiet. You've seen both sides. One year, you got a pig and a small plot of land. The next, your firewood was stolen and no one would sell you bread. You're both necessary and reviled. It's like being the last cup of water in a drought. No one loves you, but they all need you to survive. You walk past the baker's stall. She's cutting sweet buns with a blade far sharper than yours. Her daughter sees you, stares, and then suddenly becomes very interested in tying her shoes. You keep walking. A boy runs up to you. His breath is wild, like he's been chased. Is it true, he gasps, that when you chop off a head, it can still blink for a few seconds? You stop. You look at him, and for just a moment you see yourself years ago, wide-eyed and stupid and weirdly fascinated by death. You nod once. Slowly. Sometimes you say. The boy beams, thanks you, and runs off. His mother doesn't speak, but she glares at you like you just handed her child a loaded weapon. You get that look a lot. There are days when the job feels mechanical, not rope drop walk away. Other days not so much, like when the condemned asks for forgiveness, or when it's someone you vaguely recognize, a woman from market, a man from a card game last winter. You always hesitate just a second longer. You always look them in the eye, just once. That's all they ask for. The gallows never stays empty for long. And the scaffold boards, no matter how often they're scrubbed, always smell faintly of sweat and fear and iron. You can tell a lot from the walk up those stairs. Some beg, some pray, some spit at you as if you're the one who caused all this. You never answer them. Not because you don't want to, but because what would you even say? This isn't personal. They wouldn't believe you. And maybe it wouldn't be true. You spend the rest of the day sharpening your blade. It's meditative in a way. The rasp of whetstone against metal, the soft hiss as you test the edge against a strip of parchment. A sharp blade is everything. Not just for show, for mercy. You've seen what happens when the edge isn't right. Once you borrowed a blade from another executioner while yours was being reforged. It had a strange balance and a bite like a spoiled dog. The man it was meant for took 3 strokes to go still. The crowd booed. One man fainted. You didn't sleep for 2 nights. There's a common myth that heads can speak after being severed. Historians still argue whether this is true. Some say it's just muscle spasms. Others swear to having seen blinking lips, moving eyes following movement. You've never had the courage or cruelty to test it. But you've seen the twitching, the jaw clenching. Once the mouth seemed to form the word why. That was years ago. You still remember the sound of the crowd falling dead silent. Executioners in the stories always get it right. One clean chop. The head drops into the basket and that's that. But real life? It's a bit messier. The human neck is a complicated thing. There's cartilage, tendons, bone. The spine is curved, the muscles fight back. And the person, they don't exactly sit still. So you learn, you adjust your swing, you study angles, predict shifts in posture. You practice, on logs, on sandbags, on the occasional animal carcass that the butcher forgets behind his shop. You measure force and timing and foot placement, because when the moment comes, you have one shot, one. You don't always get it. Some executioners use swords, more noble, they say, cleaner. But you've used both. They each have their flaws. The axe is heavier, but more decisive. The sword? Well, the sword feels more personal. You see more. Feel more. Once a noble woman requested a French-style beheading, seated, blindfolded, with a sword. You granted the request. She smelled like lavender and fear. Her last words were, "Tell my son I sang." You don't know what she meant. You've never forgotten it. You've also seen the heads afterward. Not because you want to, but because sometimes they're left there staring up at you from the straw. Some say they grin, others claim the eyes cloud over in seconds. You don't look long enough to confirm. Your assistant, well, he used to be your assistant, once made a joke about the basket of heads being half full or half empty. You didn't laugh. He doesn't assist anymore. Crowds notice when you get it wrong. They whisper. Sometimes they jeer. "Should have sent for the Black Hood from Dunwich," one man said after a particularly bad swing. He never misses. You wanted to say that the Black Hood had died from infected blisters, but you just walked away. You start keeping your blades cleaner, sharper. You develop rituals, a silent prayer to no god in particular. 3 passes on the stone, 1 breath before the swing. You never drink the night before. You don't sleep much either. There was that one time years ago when your blade caught midway and the man screamed. Just once. It sounded like a sheep being torn open. You finished it quickly, but the scream hung in the square like smoke. That night, someone painted a red X on your door. The next morning, someone else had wiped it clean. People may fear you, but deep down, they're afraid of what happens if you're gone. If no one's left to do the grim job, then justice stops, and chaos follows close behind. You've read the old texts as executioners can read. At least you can. One monk wrote that the executioner carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken apologies. You don't know about apologies, but you do carry something. A silence. A heaviness in the chest that never quite lifts. The heads stay with you. Not literally. Though in some places they do hang them up for days as warnings. You've seen that too. Row after row of decaying faces lined up like grotesque cabbages on spikes. You try not to look. You really do. But sometimes as you pass, you catch a glimpse. And it's always the eyes. They seem to ask, "Did I deserve it?" You'll never know. Historians still debate how many executions the average hangman or headsman performed in a year. Some say dozens, others say hundreds. In your case, you stopped counting. It felt like admitting something, like tallying up ghosts. You keep a journal instead. A small, leather-bound book with no names, just symbols, a drop of ink for each act. Some pages have only 1 drop, others are nearly black. One day maybe someone will find it, and they'll wonder what kind of man marked time in blood and silence. But tonight you clean the blade again. You light a small fire. You hum an old lullaby your mother used to sing before she stopped talking to you. Before the village whispered that her son was cursed. The wind rattles the shutters. You drink something bitter. You dream of soft grass, of a world where your hands build instead of break. And somewhere in that dream, no one knows your name. You're on the scaffold again, and today it's worse than usual. Not because of the crime or the prisoner or the weather, though the drizzle isn't helping, but because you weren't given proper notice. The guards brought the man in late. No time to prep the site, no time to check your tools. Just up the stairs, read the charges, get to work. You wipe your hands on your apron and glance at the paper. The ink has run from the rain. You can barely read it, but you know the man's name. Everyone does. He's not a murderer or a thief. He's a rebel. Spoke against the bishop. Wrote things. Shared them. People listened. Which, to be clear, is often a greater crime than murder. The crowd is tense. Quieter than usual. Less jeering, more staring. It makes your neck prickle. You've seen this before. It's what happens when the condemned is popular. The prisoner walks better than most. Chin up, eyes calm. Like he's going to a wedding. Not cocky, not defiant, just still. You wish in that moment that you didn't have to do this, but you also know what happens if you don't. You read the sentence aloud. Your voice is hoarse, but you don't stumble. For inciting unrest and sedition by order of the council, you are to be executed by beheading. He nods. No last words. Just kneels, like he's been waiting. You hate this part. You position him carefully. Angle your stance. Grip the axe. Breathe. Swing. The axe bites deeper than expected. Clean. Merciful. The head tumbles into the straw eyes, still open. You step back. Wipe the blade. Try not to meet the eyes of the crowd. One woman wails. Another throws a cabbage. You're not surprised. That's the risk of your position sometimes. The people decide the punishment wasn't just. And guess who they blame? You retreat quickly today. Down the steps, through the slush cloak pulled tight. You hear voices rising behind you. Not the usual applause or boredom blend. This is sharper, angrier. Later that night, a knock at your door. It's the bailiff. Town's restless, he mutters. We're posting a guard outside your house. You blink. To protect me. He hesitates. To keep things from getting worse. So, no, probably not to protect you. Historians still argue whether executioners were tools of justice or puppets of the powerful. From where you're sitting, wrapped in a damp cloak and watching shadows dance across your wall, it's hard to tell the difference. The days blur, the jobs come faster. A thief, a deserter, a heretic. You start to see more noble robes on the scaffold, more crimes of thought than of action. And those crowds, they grow louder. Less eager for blood, more hungry for justice. You wonder what happens when the town decides you are the face of injustice. Some executioners keep trophies, rings, teeth, hair. You've never done that, never wanted to, but you do keep a list in your head, not names, just types. The ones who begged, the ones who prayed, the ones who cursed you, and the ones who smiled. Those are the worst. You still remember a man young, maybe 20, who thanked you before the blade fell. For making it quick, he said. I was afraid you'd be drunk. You weren't that day, but you were the next. There's a debate among your kind executioners, talk you know though never in public, about whether it's better to see their faces or not. Some prefer the hood, the blindfold. Makes it easier. Others want to see. Want that final connection. You're torn. Sometimes you look, sometimes you can't. And then there are the mistakes. Once you hanged a man who should have been pardoned. The order arrived an hour late, rolled up like a cruel joke. The parchment is still in your drawer, yellowed. You read it sometimes like a punishment, a reminder. You've written letters to the families, burned them all, of course. Never sent a single one. What would you even say? Sorry, I did my job too well. It's raining again. The kind of rain that taps like fingers on the shingles. You sip weak ale and stare into the fire. Sometimes when the flames dance just right, you see faces. That's probably just the guilt. Or the mushrooms in your stew. Hard to say. There's one bright spot though, your dog. A mutt with patchy fur and a limp. He doesn't care what you do for a living. He just wants scraps and a warm place to sleep. You named him Turnip, because why not? Turnip is the only one who greets you with joy. Everyone else avoids your shadow. There's a moment you remember, a festival years ago. You weren't working that day. Just walking the edge of the crowd. A little girl dropped her ribbon. You picked it up, handed it back. She smiled. Her mother saw and slapped the ribbon from your hand. Don't touch my child, she hissed. You never forgot that. Sometimes you wonder if there's a way out, a path to something else. You've heard of executioners who fled, tried to start over in distant towns, changed names, grew beards, became bakers or monks. But their hands gave them away. Strong, steady, stained. There's no such thing as a clean start in your line of work. And so when the next name arrives, you fold the parchment carefully. You sharpen the blade. You nod to the guard. You walk up the scaffold steps like they're part of your spine. Because in the end, it's not about justice. It's not even about punishment. It's about doing the job, so no one else has to. It's Sunday, supposedly the Lord's Day, a day of rest, of reflection, of bread and wine and whispered hymns under vaulted church ceilings. Not for you. For you, Sunday is just another name scrawled on parchment. Today's method beheading. The condemned a nobleman, no less. Rare, but not unheard of. When politics sour or debts grow inconvenient, titles alone won't save you from the axe. The town is unusually quiet as you make your way through the crooked lanes. Rain again. Always rain. It slicks the stones, makes your boots squeak, makes the blade feel heavier somehow. You reach the square, and the platform's already set. Guards on every corner. A cordon keeping the crowd at bay. This isn't the usual rabble. This is delicate. You nod to the captain, who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. He gives a small gesture toward the side tent where the nobleman waits. You're meant to go speak to him. Privately. This almost never happens. You enter the tent. The man is seated, hands unbound, sipping something that smells expensive. He looks up, and unlike most doesn't flinch when he sees you. "You're younger than I imagined," he says. You say nothing. "What is there to say? I've made my peace," he continues. "But if I may ask, will it be clean?" You pause, then nod. "Yes, it will be." He studies you for a long moment, as if trying to memorize your face. Then, with the faintest smile, "Then let's not keep the people waiting." Historians still debate whether noble executions were more humane. Swords instead of axes, silk hoods, last meals, paid executioners with reputations for finesse. But at the end of the day, heads roll the same. The walk from tent to scaffold feels eternal. The nobleman doesn't need to be dragged. He walks beside you, regal even now. The crowd parts in tense silence. No one dares cheer. No one dares speak. You go through the motions. Charges read. Platform checked. Basket set. Blade adjusted. He kneels. You raise the axe. You swing. It is clean. No twitch. No sound. Just the dull thump and the rush of breath, leaving 100 watching lungs at once. You wipe the blade with ceremonial care. Not for show for yourself. A moment of precision in a world that often feels senseless. You descend the steps and make your way home. Turnip meets you halfway, tail wagging. He doesn't care that you ended a nobleman's bloodline today. He just wants dried fish and a nap. You sit by the fire and stare at your hands, still steady, still strong. You once asked an older executioner how he knew when it was time to stop. He said, "When the hands start shaking, or the dreams never stop." Then he laughed. "Or when your blade breaks mid-swing." Whichever comes first. That man died in his sleep. Lucky him. The townspeople talk more these days, not just about you, but around you, about the council, about justice, about who gets to decide whose head meets the block, and you feel it's something shifting in the air, like the pressure before a storm. You don't know when it will break, but you know it will. That night, a child knocks on your door. Just a child. No guard, no parchment, just a muddy face and a nervous posture. "My mum sent me," he says. "She wants to know if you'll sharpen our knives." You blink. "Knives?" He nods. "Kitchen ones. You're good with blades, right?" You almost laugh. "Almost. He'll come tomorrow, you say?" He grins and runs off. It's a strange request, but not the first. People rarely ask you for favors. When they do, it's small things. Quick repairs. Silent advice. A pig that needs putting down. Because even if they fear you, they respect your hands. You think about your father again. He never spoke of his work. Just handed you the tools one day and said, "You'll understand when you're older." You still don't. Not really, but you've grown into it. The way a tree grows around a stone lodged in its trunk. It doesn't make sense. It just is. Sometimes when you lie awake listening to the fire crackle and turnip snore, you wonder what it would have been like to be a carpenter, or a monk, or even a thief. Thieves at least get chased for sport. You're chased in whispers. One day, they'll chase you for real. The scaffold is a stage, and like all stages, it invites attention. Stories, legends. They say the executioner never feels pain, that he cannot die by hanging, that his eyes glow red at dusk, that he drinks blood. You've heard all of them. Sometimes you wish just one of them were true. At least then you'd be more than just a man with a sharp blade and a hollow stare. You dream again that night. This time it's not a face you recognize. Just an empty square. No crowd, no scaffold. Just silence, and your axe resting on a stone, clean. And then the sun rises, and another name arrives. The robe goes on first, dark wool heavy with damp. Next, the apron-thick leather worn smooth at the hips. You tie it slowly by a habit now, each knot muscle memory, then the gloves, cracked at the knuckles, and finally the hood. You don't always wear it, but today you do, because today isn't a simple hanging or a noble's clean cut. Today is a flogging, and flogging draws a different kind of crowd, rowdy, cruel, eager. They want spectacle. You want the opposite. You walk to the square early before the crowds arrive. It helps, gives you time to check the post, test the lash. You run your fingers over the iron ring bolts, give the rope a tug. No phrase, no give. Good, they'll bring the man shortly. Theft again, but not just food this time, silver from the chapel. Enough for lashes. 20. If he faints, too bad. If he dies, well, the law allows for that too. Historians still argue whether public floggings were more about punishment or theatre. You've seen enough to know it's mostly theatre. Cheap drama at someone else's expense. People eat apples while you rip skin from backs. Some even cheer. Children climb onto barrels for a better view. The guards arrive with the prisoner, young, gaunt, all ribs and wrists. He's terrified. Good. Not because you enjoy it, but because if he's scared, he won't resist. And resistance means worse pain. For him, for you. You strap him to the post, careful but firm. He doesn't speak, just breathes fast and shallow. The crowd is gathering now. You can hear the murmur swell. They want the first strike. You give it to them. The whip lands with a wet snap. He screams. Not a loud one, more like a gasp cut short. You count silently. 1. You space the strikes, pace them. Not too fast makes it messy, not too slow makes it cruel. There's a rhythm, a method. You could almost choreograph it, like music, horrible music. By 10 lashes his back is a lattice of red lines. By 15 he's sagging. You pause, pour water over his head. He coughs, he's still conscious. That's something. At 20 you stop, step back, wipe your gloves. The crowd's energy shifts. Some clap, some look away. One woman faints. A child laughs. You never get used to that sound. The guards cut him down, drag him off. You collect your tools. No one thanks you. They never do. You return home and strip down. The robe smells like sweat and iron. The gloves go by the fire. You wash your hands twice. Then again, you dream of lashes. Only now, you're the one tied to the post. The whip is your own hand. The crowd is faceless, silent. You wake to Turnip licking your face. His breath smells like fish. You don't mind. Better than blood. There's a knock at the door, not the usual sharp rap of authority. This one's timid, hesitant. You open it to find a young woman. She holds a small pouch, coins probably. Heard you can fix things, she says. Metal things. You nod. Sometimes. She pulls out a broken cooking hook. I can't afford a blacksmith. Would you? You take it gently. I'll try. That's how it goes now. Between jobs, you repair tools, sharpen blades, mend leather, anything to fill the time, anything to make you feel like your hands can do something that isn't destruction. Sometimes you wish you could wear a different costume, not the robe, not the hood, maybe a smith's apron or a farmer's tunic, something that doesn't make children cry or men cross the street. But then the next name arrives, and you become who they need again. Executioners in some towns wore red, others black. Some had elaborate masks. You've even heard of one who painted his face like a skull. You don't do that. You're not interested in pageantry. You just want the job done. Still, you can't deny the effect. The costume gives you distance, power, fear. Sometimes that fear keeps the crowd in check, keeps the condemned from fighting. But sometimes it makes things worse. You remember a day when a boy was brought up barely a man, caught stealing grain. It was supposed to be a lashing. But he saw the hood.
The whip. He panicked, fought the guards, bit one, ran, didn't make it 3 feet. They made you beat him anyway. After he'd already been trampled, the crowd booed not at him, at you. You walked home that day in silence. Even Turnip didn't wag his tail. Historians still argue whether medieval punishments deterred crime or simply entertained the masses. You'd argue neither. People stole because they were hungry. People killed because they were angry. People watched because there was nothing else to do. You participated because you had no choice. Some days you think of walking into the woods and never coming back. Let someone else carry the hood. Let the town figure out how to swing the axe or tie the knots. But then what the forest doesn't want you either. You've tried. Once spent 3 nights under the trees waiting for some sign. All you got was cold, hungry, and chased by a badger. You returned, sharpened the blade, took the next name. Your fire crackles.
You sip broth. Watch the steam curl. The hood hangs on the wall drying. It looks back at you like a second face. One you didn't ask for. Maybe one day you'll bury it. Maybe one day no one will need it. But not today. Today you mend a cooking hook for a girl who can't afford the blacksmith. And tomorrow brings another name. The satchel slaps against your hip with every step. Inside it, iron tongs, a branding iron, 2 lengths of rope, and a dagger just in case. Today isn't a hanging or a beheading. It's branding. And as far as punishments go, it's one of the more complicated ones. You reach the square early. The brazier is already smoking. A guard pokes at the coals with a stick, trying to coax the heat into a consistent roar. Branding irons don't work half-hot. They either sear properly or make a horrific mess, half-burnt flesh screaming infection. And worse, scars that don't match the sentence. You've seen it happen. Today's mark is a T for thief. It goes on the hand, or the forehead if the judge is feeling theatrical. You glance at the warrant. Hand, thankfully. First offence. The woman is young, maybe 20. Bread again. You wonder sometimes if the bakers make their crusts too golden on purpose just to tempt the desperate. She's tied to the post when you arrive, shaking but silent. You check the iron. Still cold. You adjust the coal's weight. Waiting is the worst part. It gives the crowd time to gather, time to whisper, time to build expectations. Someone bets on whether shells scream. Someone else says they saw her steal twice before. She's lucky it's not her tongue. Historians still debate whether branding was meant to shame or to warn. The truth is simpler, it's permanent. A sentence carried on your skin. A reminder to others, yes, but mostly to the one who wears it. You test the iron. Sizzle. Not yet. You glance at the girl. She looks at the sky. No begging, no tears, just resignation. You pick up the iron, grip it firm and breathe. Then, with practiced motion, press it against her skin. The hiss is sharp. Her scream is short. The smell-burnt pork mostly makes some in the crowd gag. You hold it a beat longer than needed, just enough to make it last. Then you pull away. The guard cuts her free. She stumbles, clutching her hand. The mark is clear. No doubt what she did now, or what was done to her. You wipe the iron clean with a cloth that's stained brown from 100 others. You pack up. You leave. On the way home, a boy runs up beside you. Is it true, he asks, panting, that some people like it? The burning. You don't stop walking. No. But I heard no, you repeat. He slows, drops behind. You don't turn around. You've heard the rumors too, that some people seek out pain, that there's pleasure in punishment, that certain lords have their own devices behind stone walls, but that's not what happens in the square. In the square, there's only humiliation and scars. And you, the one holding the iron, back at your shack, you hang your tools on their pegs. Each one has a place. The tongs, the brands, the whip coils, the axe. Your wall is a gallery of unspoken horrors. You take off your apron, wash your hands, scrub until the scent fades. Almost. You remember once branding a man who cursed you the entire time, called you demon devil defiler, said your soul would burn hotter than his flesh ever could. Then he passed out. You poured water on his head, not out of mercy, just to keep the crowd calm. You think about that man more often than you'd like. There's a rustling outside. You open the door to find a farmer, hat in hand. "My cow's gone lame," he says. "Won't stand. Thought maybe you could." You nod. "Ill, come in the morning." He leaves without saying thank you. That's fine. You're used to it. Some towns had executioners who doubled as veterinarians, bone setters, even undertakers. You're not sure how that started, but it makes a strange sort of sense. If you know how to break a body, you probably know how to fix one too. Still, it's a weird reputation to carry, bringer of death, mender of animals. You sit by the fire, cup in hand. Turnip curls at your feet, snoring softly. You stare at the iron tongs hanging by the hearth. The same pair you used to reset a broken ankle last winter. The same ones you used to pull teeth from a thief who bit the judge. One tool, many purposes. You sometimes wonder if anyone sees you as a person of many purposes. Or just the hood. There was a girl once, a potter's daughter. She didn't flinch when you spoke to her at market, even smiled, asked your name. You didn't tell her, couldn't. And by next market day she was engaged to a cooper's son, probably for the best. Historians still argue whether executioners had families, lived normal lives. Some did, some didn't. You've seen both. You've never had the option. The hood doesn't leave room for weddings. You dream again, only this time it's not the scaffold. It's your tools floating in the air, spinning slowly, glowing red. Each one branded with your own face. You wake in sweat. The room is quiet. The fire is low. Turnip shifts, yawns, sleeps again. You rise. Stare at your wall of iron and wood, your museum of pain, and you know tomorrow is another job, another method, another body. You sharpen the tools anyway, because whether it's rope or blade or brand, someone has to hold it. And in this town, that someone is always you. The rain doesn't stop this week. It seeps into everything, your boots, your blankets, your bones. Even Turnip refuses to go outside unless absolutely necessary. The mud has risen halfway up the path to your shack, and inside it smells of damp wool, old iron, and quiet despair. The week's duties arrive on a single parchment sealed with wax. 4 names again. One of them you recognize. Not well, but enough. A tanner. Friendly Loud always waved at you from his cart like you were just another tradesman. Turns out he'd been hiding fugitives. You sit a while after reading the name. The room is quiet, except for the fire crackling and the slow drip of water from a hole in the roof. The leak's gotten worse. You really should fix that. But the tanner's face lingers behind your eyes. It's time like these you remember your father, a grim man with a thick beard and calloused hands. Never one for conversation. But one thing he said has never left you. You don't choose this work. It chooses you. And if you fight it, it only hurts more. He wasn't wrong. You light the forge. The axe needs a little tuning. The tip has dulled from last week's work, and the edge chipped on a stubborn vertebra. You file it smooth, slower than usual. The metal sings against the stone a low, mournful hum. People think of executioners as monsters or machines, but you have doubts, regrets, fears. You just don't show them. There's no space for softness on the scaffold. When you return to town the next day, something's changed. People look at you more directly. Not with admiration, never that, but less fear. More curiosity, like they're beginning to wonder what it's like to be you. The tanner's arrest was public, his sentence beheading. His friends are upset, his enemies pleased, and the council silent, of course. Their decisions never come with explanations, just orders. You walk to the square under grey skies, your hood pulled low. The scaffold is wet. You grip the railing tighter than usual as you climb. The guards bring him out. He looks older than you remember, more tired. He recognizes you immediately. His face falls just for a moment, but then he straightens. "Could've been worse," he says quietly as he's bound to the kneeler. "Could've been the wheel." You nod. Not much to say. The axe is ready. You double-check the alignment. No spectators jeering today, just tense silence. Even the ravens seem to hold their breath. You raise the blade. Swing. It's clean. You wipe it with your cloth. He deserved better, you think. But then again, they all say that. Historians still argue whether executioners ever refused to kill people they knew. Most didn't have that choice. You certainly don't. Refusing means punishment, replacement, or worse, being mistaken for sympathizer. You descend the steps as the body is carted away. Someone spits near your feet. Another mutters, "Murderer." You don't answer. You never do. Back at home, Turnip greets you at the door, tail wagging. At least he hasn't changed. You feed him a bit of salted meat, pour yourself a mug of rain-thinned ale, and sit down hard on the bench by the fire. You reach into the drawer beside your bed. Take out the leather journal, the one with no names, just marks. Today, you add a new one, a single black dot smeared slightly from your wet fingers. The fire's glow flickers across your tools. They seem heavier tonight. You remember a story from your father about a town where the executioner vanished. Just disappeared one night. The council panicked, hired a traveller to do the next job. He missed 5 times. The crowd rioted, burned the courthouse. No one ever found the original executioner. Some say he changed his name and lived in the forest. Others say the townsfolk buried him under the scaffold. You never knew which version your father believed. He just told it like a bedtime tale, his version of a lullaby. That night you dream of the forest, thick trees, no axes, no ropes, just wind and birds and the sound of your own breath. You wake before dawn. There's a knock at the door. This time it's not a guard. It's a woman, middle-aged, stern face. She holds out a coin pouch. "I heard you help with sick animals. My mare's foaling wrong. Can't get the leg out." You blink at her, still groggy. "Why not the vet? He won't come out this far. But you're strong and steady." You nod, grab your coat, follow her through the misty fields. The mare is sweating, flanks twitching. You've seen worse, but not by much. You roll up your sleeves, work slowly, gently. The leg comes free. The foal is born, alive. She offers more coins. You shake your head, just glad it lived. She looks at you a long moment, then nods. "I won't tell anyone you smiled," she says, and walks off. You stand there in the wet grass, hands bloody, but not from punishment. And for just a moment, you're not the executioner. You're something else. You're useful. The market square smells like onions, wet wool, and mistrust. You pass through it with your hood tucked low the way you always do. You're not scheduled today, but that doesn't mean you go unnoticed. You never do. A child watches you from behind a crate of cabbages. His eyes widen as if you might split someone in half just for fun. You keep walking. The illusion is easier that way. This town knows you too well. In the city, executioners wear hoods not for tradition but for survival. Here in this small town, a hood doesn't help. Everyone knows your gate, your dog, your shack by the river. You're as familiar as the mill or the tavern, just less welcome. In the cities they call you Master of the Blade or His Grimness or something equally theatrical. Here you're that one, or less generously, the Devil's Clerk. You stop at the smithy. Your axe needs its rivets replaced. The blacksmith doesn't speak to you directly, just nods, points, takes the tool with tongs and never lets it touch his skin. Hell have it ready by morning, he says through his apprentice. It's always like this. You float through town like a rumor that never quite dies. Later that evening, a young man knocks at your door, nervous, pale, clearly from another village. Heard you're him, he says. The one who does the work. You nod. He swallows. My brother. He's been sentenced in the city. Hanging. But he's scared. He asked if I could find someone good, someone clean, someone who won't make it worse. You blink. You want me to go to the city? He nods quickly. I have coin. His all I have. You consider. It's not common, but not unheard of. Sometimes families do pay to have a known executioner do the job. It's morbid, but in a world full of pain, some want the last moment to be handled with care. You agree not for the coin, but because of the way the man asked, with sincerity, with a quiet desperation you recognize far too well. The next morning you leave. Turnip stays behind with the old woman next door who pretends she doesn't like him. You know, she'll sneak him meat. The road to the city is long and miserable. Rain again, always rain. Mud cakes your boots, and the stink of the tanneries hits you miles before the gates. At the outer wall, the guards stop you. One frowns. You're not from here. What's your business? You show the writ. Signed, sealed, official. He eyes it. Then you. Executioner, huh? Thought you'd be taller. You shrug. Everyone does. He lets you through. The city pulses with noise. Market cries, cartwheels, horses' bells. It's overwhelming at first. You're used to silence, to wide spaces and wary glances. Here people don't look at you. That's the luxury of a crowd. You disappear again. But not for long. You find the jail. The clerk confirms your assignment with a nod. Hang-ins at noon. Third one. Don't be late. Use your own rope if you want. Ours is thick but clumsy. You nod. Thank him. Leave. You always bring your own rope. You sit on the edge of the green near the gallows and wait. Watch the crowd build. This one's different. Bigger. Louder. City people treat executions like theatre. Children with sticky fingers hold sugar fruits. A man sells hot broth. You even hear a lute. It makes your stomach twist. When the prisoner is brought out, you know immediately it's the brother. Looks just like him, only thinner. He's shaking but holding his head up. You speak softly to him before it begins. Your brother sends his love. You won't suffer. He stares at you, blinks hard, then nods. You tie the knot with precision, place it just behind the left ear. It's called the long drop knot. Done right, it snaps the neck instantly. Done wrong, it strangles. You don't get it wrong. When the lever drops, it's clean. No twitching, no gurgle. The brother's body swings once, then stills. The crowd claps. That's the worst part. That awful sound of clapping for death. You descend without ceremony. Pack your rope. Leave. You return home 3 days later. Turnip howls with joy and rolls in mud just to share the mess. The woman next door tells you he behaved, but she secretly knit him a new blanket. You thank her with dried fish and a nod. Historians still argue whether executioners felt pride in their work. Some say, yes, skilled technique, respected craft. Others say, noonly shame, only guilt. You're not sure. You just know that the young man came back the next day. He gave you the rest of the coin, but also something more. Thank you, he said, for making it bearable. You say nothing, just nod. But that night you add a mark in your book, not black like the others. This one you draw in red, different. Turnip sleeps beside your boots. The rain starts again, tapping soft against the roof. You listen to it for hours, wondering if there's such a thing as grace even in this kind of life. Maybe. The knock on your door comes just past midnight, 3 quick raps, urgent but not panicked. You roll out of bed still in your tunic and open the door to find a guard soaked through and breathless. "There's been a killing," he says. "Not lawful." You blink once. "So not my job, counsel says you're needed."
Ah, that kind of killing. Apparently a merchant's son was murdered in a tavern brawl. The killer, a foreigner or so they claim, was caught fleeing the scene. No trial, no delay. They want the man dead by sunrise. Quietly, efficiently. No scaffold, no crowd. You grab your tools. Not the axe this time, just rope and a short knife. The guard won't look you in the eye as you walk beside him. You don't press. He's young. New to this. Doesn't yet know that in this line of work silence is armor. You reach the jail before the cock crows. It smells like piss and mold and a hint of iron. The prisoner is awake, no older than 30. He doesn't beg, doesn't scream. He just stares. "Wasn't me," he says. You nod. "Doesn't matter." Of course it does. He's not angry, just disappointed. You don't blame him. They've already chosen a method, strangulation. You hate strangulation. It's clumsy, intimate. It takes longer than people think. The body doesn't go quietly. You prepare anyway. The guards leave. They don't want to watch. You kneel behind him, loop the rope twist. He gasps, kicks once, then goes still. You wait an extra minute just in case. Later, as you rinse your hands in the courtyard fountain, you think about his words. Doesn't matter. He was right. In this world, innocence bends to urgency, and you're just the blade that moves when told. Historians still argue whether executioners participated in extra-legal deaths. Some insist they were bound strictly to official writs. Others know better. You've read both sides, and you've lived the part where orders come whispered in the dark and bodies disappear without ceremony. You walk home with wet boots and heavier shoulders. Turnip greets you with a sneeze and a growl. Even he seems unsettled. You toss your cloak over the stool, pour yourself something strong, and sit in silence. The next day, the official execution goes on as planned. A public flogging. Drunk soldier. Disorderly conduct. 15 lashes. The crowd is huge news of the merchant's son travels fast. They expect a bigger show but get only the lash. Some boo. One man yells, "Hang him instead," gesturing toward the soldier. The guards ignore it. You go through the motions. Snap, pause, snap, count, wipe, leave. But the weight of the night before hasn't lifted, not even close. That evening, you take a walk into the woods, not far, just enough to get away from walls and whispers. The air is cold, crisp. You think of the forest paths your father used to follow looking for mushrooms. You wonder if he walked here too. You sit by a tree, Turnip curled beside you, and stare at the stars. There are more of them out here, brighter, cleaner. You close your eyes and imagine a world without ropes or blades or brands. A world where your hands built fences, held babies, planted seeds. You stay until dawn, then you go home. You arrive to find a note wedged into your door. It's unsigned, scrawled in charcoal on rough paper. You do the devil's work. Hope your dreams choke you. You stare at it for a moment, then burn it without reading it twice. It's not the first, won't be the last. You think of the strangled man, his calm, his disbelief, his last breath hot against your glove. You think about the city, the boy who thanked you, the girl who asked you to fix a pan.
and you think maybe this life isn't about redemption. Maybe it's about bearing weight others can't, about carrying the blame so someone else doesn't have to. Maybe that's enough. You add another mark to your book. It smears slightly as if it knows. You sharpen your knife, tighten the lash, coil the rope. Because whatever's coming next, it will arrive with your name already written on it. Your house, if it can be called that, leans against a hill like an old drunk roof, sagging chimney, cracked windows warped just enough to whistle in the wind.
You've patched the holes a dozen times, and each rainstorm reminds you that your craftsmanship skills are best kept to the executioner's block. But it's where you live, just outside the town's walls, beyond the pale they call it. Fitting. You used to wonder why executioners weren't allowed within city limits. Now you don't. It's easier for everyone this way. They don't have to see you sharpening your axe while they butter their bread, and you don't have to listen to the silence that follows whenever you enter a room. Still, there's something about living next to your own workplace that never feels right, because just up the rise through a muddy patch of weeds and a crooked fence stands the gallows. You can see it from your window. At night, the silhouette cuts across the moon like a finger raised in warning. By day, the ravens circle lazily overhead, sometimes perching on the crossbeam, cawing like drunks at a feast. They're smarter than people think, those birds.
They know what the scaffold means, and they know you feed them. Every morning you toss them scraps, bones, crusts, bits of meat too small for turnip. They come to rely on you, and in a strange way, you come to rely on them. Companions of convenience, creatures of habit. You once named one of them Old Bishop, because he strutted with a limp and always seemed to be judging everyone. Another, with a twisted tail feather, you called Widow. Widow disappeared last winter. You still glance toward the tree line just in case. Historians still argue whether executioners were provided housing or simply shunned into the wilderness. Some records say they were granted land. Others suggest towns pushed them just far enough away to feel safe, but close enough to call when needed. You know which is true. You're not granted this land, you're exiled to it. The path from your door to the gallows is worn down by your own feet. You don't even think about it anymore. You could walk it blindfolded.
And some days you wish you could. You once tried planting flowers along the edge, just to see if something else could grow here. They didn't last a week. Too much trampling, too much salt in the soil, too much memory. Turnip barks suddenly and darts toward the door. You follow, stepping into the muddy yard. A group of children stand at the fence, watching you. One dares to shout, "Hey, is it true your dog eats toes?" You stare at them, say nothing. They run, turnip pants happily tail wagging. He has no idea what the word monster means. You squat beside him, scratch behind his ears and say, "If only you could talk, eh?" The only answer is a soft woof. You remember hearing once that some executioners trained dogs to help with their work-dragging bodies chasing down escapees. You could never stomach that. Turnip isn't a tool. He's just a dumb, loyal creature who doesn't flinch when you touch him. That alone makes him a rare kind of saint. Inside the fire is burning low. You toss on a log. It hisses and pops, reminding you of wet rope tightening. Tomorrow another job. A man convicted of fraud. Not a thief, not exactly. A swindler. He sold fake relics, bones of saints that turned out to be pig joints, claimed a thumb was from St. Crispin. Turns out it was a turkey toe, the punishment pillory. You haven't done one in a while. Pillories are strange. Less violent, more humiliating. The condemned gets locked in wood stocks in the centre of town. No execution, no blood, just exposure, public mockery, rotten vegetables. Some say it's kinder, others say it's worse. You've seen men cry more in the pillory than on the scaffold. You prep the wooden frame that evening, check the locks, oil the hinges. You still do the work even if the pain doesn't involve you directly. You stand by while it happens. That's part of the job. You are both instrument and witness. The next day the crowd is thick. They love a pillory. less somber, more festive.
Children throw turnips, women hurl insults, men laugh. You watch from the side, arms crossed. The swindler-faced, dripping with cabbage water, tries to keep a brave face. Fails. An old man shouts, "Maybe next time you'll sell your own bones, eh?" The crowd roars. You want to feel sympathy. You almost do. But you remember your father's words, "Don't judge, just do." After 2 hours, the prisoner is released, bruised, humiliated but alive. You walk home. The town doesn't quiet as you pass, not like usual. Maybe they're still buzzing from the laughter. That night, Turnip barks again. You look outside. The gallows stands still, lit by the moon, and beside it, a shadow, a person. You step outside slowly. The figure doesn't move. You get close enough to see it's a woman, hooded, not crying, just watching. You say nothing. She turns to you. "My brother," she says. "Last week." You nod. Wait. She doesn't spit, doesn't curse, just looks at you for a long, long time.
Then she walks away. And you realize not everyone comes to the gallows to scream. Some just come to remember. The next name comes folded into a waxy scroll, damp from the courier's nervous sweat. You recognize the seal. It's not local. Not even from the next town. This one bears the mark of the High Court, which means someone important is coming. Or rather, someone important is going. You open it and read slowly. A baron, guilty of treason, caught conspiring with border raiders. The council wants the execution done here quietly. No public display, no crowd, just a clean death far from gossip and grandeur. They've chosen you for it. You sigh. You were hoping for a quiet week, maybe more repair work, maybe patching the leaky roof, maybe something not involving high-born blood. But the council doesn't ask. Historians still debate whether provincial executioners were summoned for noble deaths or if the crown kept specialists. You know the truth. When they want deniability, they come to people like you. They want someone practiced but disposable. The baron arrives under guard, gagged, hooded, chained in a cart like a criminal. He doesn't look like a traitor, just tired. You've seen that look before on the faces of men who know they won't see another sunrise. The guards won't let you speak to him. Orders, they say. No last words, just the deed. They want it done in the field behind the chapel before dawn. No gallows, no sword, just axe, straw, and discretion. You walk the land that evening, scythe in hand, clearing weeds to make a flat space. You dig a shallow pit for drainage. You lay out the cloth. Prepare the axe. Sharpen it under a flickering lantern, each stroke echoing in the stillness. The guards arrive late, dragging the baron between them. He doesn't fight, doesn't speak. You motion to the block. He kneels. For a moment he meets your eyes. He looks grateful. You swing. It is done. You don't watch the body, you just clean the blade. The guards bundle the remains in burlap and toss them in the cart. No prayers, no rites, just silence. You return home with a few extra coins and the weight of a nobleman's gaze still behind your eyes. The next morning the church bell tolls. Not for him, for a baker's child who died of fever. Life as ever goes on. At market whispers swirl. No one says the baron's name aloud, but they know. They always know. Shame, someone mutters. He had fine horses. That's what traitors get, another says, picking bruised pears. You walk past with your hood down. No one says it to your face. Back home, you feed Turnip. The sun hangs low, yellow and sour. You take out your journal, open to a blank page. This time no black mark, no red, just a line. Long, quiet, final. You close the book. Later there's a knock. It's the priest. He hasn't visited you in months. He stands in your doorway like he's not sure if stepping inside will curse him. Baron was baptized, he says. We should speak his name. You raise an eyebrow. Before or after you wash the blood?
He flinches. You're not beyond salvation, you know. You shrug. I don't seek it. He leaves you with a small loaf of bread anyway. It's stale, but warm. That night, the wind howls across the fields. You lie awake and stare at the rafters, wondering if the Baron's ghost will visit. He doesn't. But you dream of a ballroom, music, laughter, a masked man staring at you from across the room. His mask is your face. You wake to crows scratching on the shutters. You open the window, toss them crusts, watch them fight. Your hands are stiff. Winter is coming. The gallows will need new oil. The ropes will tighten in the cold. You stretch your shoulders, make tea, feed the dog. Another day, another name soon. And you are always ready. The smell hits you before you even round the bend. Smoke thick and oily mixed with the acrid tang of burning flesh. You know the scent well. It never changes, no matter who lights the fire or why it's burning. It always smells like finality. Today is not a hanging, not a beheading, not a branding. Today is a burning. You'd hoped this one would never come again. They say she's a witch, that she summoned storms, that she curdled milk with her eyes, that she spoke to animals, danced in the woods and bore no children, which in this town is just enough to earn you a death sentence, especially when someone's crops fail and they need someone to blame. Historians still argue whether most accused witches were herbalists, healers, or simply unfortunate women with bad timing. You've seen all three. Today's victim, you don't know, but she's no demon. That much is obvious. She's old. Grey hair tucked into a filthy shawl. She doesn't fight as they bind her to the stake. Doesn't scream when they pile the kindling high. She watches everything with a steady, bitter calmness if she's already past fear. The square is packed, children on shoulders, priests in full robes, merchants holding hands with wives they never smile at. Everyone's here pretending this is righteous, that this is justice. You stand nearby, not in charge, but required to oversee. You aren't the one lighting the torch. That job goes to a young deacon with trembling fingers and eyes too wide. But you're the one who ensures it's done cleanly. Cleanly. What a word. You keep your axe at your belt just in case, if the flames rise wrong, if she panics, if something goes wrong. Your job is to end it quickly. That's the mercy part. The torch catches. The flames lick upward with a greedy rush. She closes her eyes, doesn't scream. The crowd shifts, murmurs. Some people cheer. Others pretend they're not watching. You watch, not her. The people. You always watch the people. A boy turns away, tears in his eyes. His mother snaps, "Look, this is what happens to wicked women." He does not look. You stay until it's done. Afterward, when the fire has burned low and only smouldering ruin remains, you help the bailiffs shovel ash into a pit behind the chapel. You do it in silence. The priest mumbles something that sounds like forgiveness but smells of smoke. You don't sleep that night. Turnip winds paces. He knows something's off. You don't speak to him. You don't speak to anyone. You just sit by the fire, staring into it, flinching every time it pops. Once years ago, you asked your father how many witches he burned. He said, "Enough to know they're not the ones who deserve it." He never elaborated. In the morning, you find a bundle on your doorstep. Herbs, lavender, rosemary, tied with a red string. No note. You know what it means. Someone in town disagreed with yesterday's fire, and now silently they're trying to cleanse the air. Or maybe your conscience. You hang the bundle above your door anyway. Turnip sneezes. That afternoon you take a long walk to the river. You strip off your gloves and dunk them in the freezing water. Scrub until your hands are raw. Doesn't help. Nothing does. Historians still debate how much choice executioners had in burning witches. Some say it was just another task, no different than tying a rope. Others believe many protested quietly sabotaged fires offered quicker deaths. You've done all three, but in the end the fire still burns, and you are still the one standing beside it. Later you stop by the apothecary.
She doesn't flinch when you walk in. In fact, she nods at the herb bundle above your door. She helped people, she says simply. You know that. You nod. I know. She offers you a small tin of salve for burns, for your hands. You take it. Back home, you rub it in slowly. Watch the redness fade. A little. The rest stays. Always does.
That night you dream of flames, but you're the one tied to the stake. And the crowd is laughing. Not cheering, not angry, just laughing. You wake in sweat, heart racing. Turnip whines and climbs into your bed, his warm fur grounding you to the present. You bury your face into his side and whisper, "She didn't scream." He doesn't answer, of course, but somehow you feel less alone. Tomorrow, another task, another sentence. But tonight you remember her silence, and you hope just this once that it echoes longer than the fire ever did. You take a job that pulls you beyond the borders of your little town, an invitation from across the river, a distant village where they don't yet know your name, only your reputation. They want an executioner. Quiet, skilled, no questions asked. You pack your tools. The usual, the axe, the rope, a spare brand in case the law there is more creative. Turnip whines as you load your satchel. He hates travel. You leave him with the old woman next door again. She claims she's too old for dogs. Her knitting basket says otherwise. The journey takes 2 days by cart. You pass through misty valleys, ruined abbeys, and hamlets so small they don't bother naming them on maps. In one, a child points at you and says, "Is that death?" The mother shushes her, but doesn't correct her. You arrive just before dusk. The village is pretty in the way that only places untouched by progress can be: wooden fences, ivy-stained wells, and fields fat with barley. But there's a tension here. People glance at you, then away. They know what's coming. They always do. You're led to the local magistrate, a rotund man with clean fingernails and a too smooth voice. He explains the crime, murder of a priest. Confessed. The villagers want justice, he says, adjusting his robe, but the church wants silence. And you're the compromise. You ask to speak to the condemned. That's unusual.
He raises an eyebrow but agrees. The man is in a locked shed, not even a jail. He looks up as you enter. Mid-30s, blood dried on his shirt, one eye blackened. But his stare is steady. I did it, he says. He was hurting children. No one believed me. Until I made them believe. You don't respond. He leans forward. They'll hang me for this. But I'd do it again. You leave the shed with a stone in your gut. It doesn't budge. The magistrate wants it done before dawn. Before the bishop arrives, he mutters. That night, under a pale moon, you prepare the rope. You wonder, is justice ever straight, or just bent in favor of whoever speaks last? Historians still argue whether executioners ever judged their own assignments. Most claim the job required detachment. But the truth is, detachment is just a mask you wear, so no one asks if you're human. At dawn, the villagers gather in the square. They don't cheer. They don't jeer.
Just stand in quiet clumps, eyes on the scaffold like it might spit fire. The condemned walks himself up, doesn't resist, doesn't beg. You tie the knot, position it carefully. This time you look him in the eye. He smiles. You pull the lever. His neck snaps cleanly. His body swings once, then stills. The villagers disperse like mist. No words, no prayers. You pack your tools and return to the cart. The magistrate tries to hand you extra coin. You take half. "Don't send for me again," you say softly. He doesn't answer. The journey back is slower. You stop by the river and wash your hands until they're pale and pruned. You don't eat that night. Just lie on your back staring at the stars through thin clouds. You reach your home by afternoon. Turnip leaps into your arms like nothing happened. The old woman gives you a loaf of rye and a look that says she knows. Maybe she does. You hang your tools. Unpack the satchel. Boil tea. Sit. The birds outside chirp like fools.
Spring is coming. You open your journal. For the first time in a long while, you hesitate before making your mark. Then finally, you draw a curve. Not a dot, Not a line, a spiral, small, tight, like something closing in. You sleep hard that night. No dreams, just rest. The next morning, a knock on the door. Not a guard, not a priest, a woman. She holds a basket. Inside, bread, herbs, and a folded note. "I just wanted to say thank you," she says, "for making it quick." You don't ask who she's talking about. You already know. You take the basket, nod. And when she leaves, you don't feel lighter, but you feel understood. And in your line of work, that's the closest thing to peace you'll ever get. There's a stillness in the air this week. No parchment, no names, no messenger pounding at your door with early morning urgency. Just quiet. You half wonder if something's wrong, or just maybe people have stopped dying by each other's hands for a few days.
You know better than to believe that. Still, you take the opportunity. You sweep the floor, mend your cloak, sharpen your tools not for duty but from habit. There's a rhythm to it now. Your hands know the motions. It's like muscle memory or a ritual. Outside, Turnip chases a crow through the garden patch you've tried and failed to keep alive. There are a few stubborn onions, a defiant stalk of rosemary. Everything else withered under too much shadow. Maybe it just knows who planted it. You consider going into town buying some lamp oil, maybe trading for a pair of boots that don't leak. But you hesitate. It's hard to enjoy the market when every glance feels like a whispered accusation. Besides, your boots still mostly hold together, and you don't mind a little rain in your socks. You've walked in worse. Instead, you walk up the hill. The gallows creaks in the wind-dry rope, twisting lazily, like it's trying to remember its purpose. You sit beneath it, back against one of the heavy beams. It's strange how familiar this place has become. How quiet. You've stood here with hundreds of people shouting around you, but today it's just the wind, just the ravens, just you. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen. In your mind you hear the echoes, every scream, every final prayer, every insult, every silent stare. Historians still argue whether executioners felt the weight of the scaffold long after they left it behind. You could settle that debate easily. The scaffold doesn't leave you. You carry it with you, like a scar no one can see, like a rhythm in your bones. Your father once told you that the rope dreams before you do, that it remembers every neck, every weight, every shift of gravity. You didn't understand what he meant until you started dreaming of ropes that move on their own, of knots that whisper. You rise and walk the perimeter. The platform boards are warped in places, a few nails loose. You crouch and hammer them back in, not because anyone asked, just because it wouldn't sit right if it fell apart. Not yet. Back at home, you light a lantern. The flickering glow casts long shadows on your wall of tools, the axe, the brands, the rope, the blade, each one with its own place, its own memory. You sit down, open your journal, and stare at the last mark you made, the spiral. You trace it with your finger, then carefully you turn to a fresh page. This time you don't draw anything. Just leave it blank. Not because you're done, but because for now there's nothing more to say. That evening someone knocks. You expect the usual: a warrant, a message, a new task. But it's a man in travel-stained clothes. Stranger, tall, sharp-eyed. "You're the headsman here?" he asks. You nod. He exhales, relieved. "Good. I've come to learn." You blink. "Learn? I'm to be appointed in the next village. No one there's held the post in 3 years. They want it back. Properly." He pauses. "They say you're the best." You stare at him for a long time. He doesn't flinch, doesn't look away. Eventually you step aside. "Come in then." He enters, glances at the tools, the fire, the hound curled near the hearth. "Quiet life," he says. You nod again, loud enough when it needs to be. You pour tea. You show him the blade, the knots, the iron. You tell him where to stand so the blood doesn't reach his boots. You explain how to make the swing clean, how to breathe first, how to never blink. But more than that, you tell him about the silence afterward, about the days when no one speaks to you, about the nights that stretch long, about the dog, the dreams, the soft whistle of a gallows rope in the wind. He listens, carefully, respectfully, and in that moment you see yourself not as the man you are, but as the one you became. When he leaves the next morning, you give him your spare whetstone. Keep it sharp, you say. He nods. Always. Then he's gone. Turnip watches from the doorway, tail twitching. You sit by the fire, open your journal again. This time you write something. Not a name, not a symbol, just a line: I showed someone how to hold the axe today. He held it well. Then you close the book, and for the first time in years, the gallows stays quiet for another day. And another. And another. You don't ask why. You just listen to the quiet. Let it rest. Let yourself rest. Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the damp, winding woods of the medieval countryside. There's no torchlight here, no village bells, no soft laughter behind closed shutters. Just you, a threadbare cloak and a sack of rattling bottles, dried herbs, and something that may or may not still be alive. The air is heavy with wet moss and the slow decay of forgotten leaves. Something rustles to your left. It's either a fox or a warning. You don't flinch. You've been walking this road your whole life. You're a wandering healer. Though depending on the town, they might call you a doctor, a heretic, a miracle worker, or occasionally a demon. And you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I'm always curious how far these sleepy stories travel. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up a muddy slope, the leather strap of your satchel biting into your shoulder. The trees around you drip with last night's rain, and the hem of your robe is soaked to the knees. You smell like rosemary root water, and whatever you stepped in 2 miles ago. The pouch at your side jangles with tinctures, bones, and tiny vials sealed with wax and wishful thinking. Ahead, a wooden gate. A village you've never seen, but one that somehow feels familiar. They always do. Thatched roofs, leaning like drunks, smoke curling from crooked chimneys, a single chicken pecking the mud like it owns the world. You pause, adjust your hood, walk forward slowly. The first face you see is a child's smuddy cheeks, curious eyes, finger halfway to the nose. He watches you like you're part ghost, part circus act. His mother grabs his shoulder, yanks him inside without a word. You're used to that? The baker glances up from his stall, stares, then pretends to inspect his bread. A man with a limp crosses himself as you pass. You don't take it personally. You're just unsettling. People don't know what to make of someone who claims to cure fevers using frog livers and boiled nettles. You find the village headman near the well. He's nervous, polite, and doesn't meet your eyes. We heard someone like you was nearby, he says. Our blacksmith's daughter, she's burning up. Nothing works. You nod. You don't ask for coin. That comes later, or never. They lead you to a small cottage with walls that seem to pulse with heat. Inside, the girl lies on a straw mattress, sweat soaking her hair, lips cracked. Her breath rasps like bellows under strain. Her mother hovers, biting her nails to the quick. You kneel beside the girl, feel her forehead, lift her wrist, smell her breath. Sour, fevered. Not plague, not yet, but not good either. You open your bag. Out comes the kit jars of dried wormwood, nettle leaves, willow bark. A small bottle labelled in your own shorthand, blessed oil maybe just goose fat. Sometimes it's all about the story. You mix a paste, apply it to her chest, burn dried sage beside her head. Whisper a prayer not because you believe it changes anything, but because they do. Belief is half the cure. The villagers watch from the doorway. You can feel their fear. They don't speak, but the tension in the room says everything. If she dies, you'll be blamed. If she lives, they'll thank God. Either way, you don't get the credit. You sit beside her through the night, reapply the paste, make her sip warm broth laced with powdered bark, fan her when she shivers, Cover her when she sweats. It's slow work, delicate, like persuading death to wait just one more day. Around dawn, her breathing steadies. The fever breaks just a little. You don't smile, not yet. You've seen fevers return with a vengeance.
But it's a good sign. The mother weeps. The father gives you a chunk of bread, hard as stone but sincere. You take it, nod, leave. As you walk through the square, a man offers you a pinch of salt. That's his way of saying thanks. The baker gives you a nod. The child from before watches from behind a barrel, still curious now, a little braver. You leave the village before they have time to decide if you're a blessing or a curse. Historians still argue whether medieval healers like you were more helpful than harmful. You don't have time for debates. All you know is that sometimes when no one else will touch the sick or the cursed or the dying, they call for you. You sleep that night under an overturned cart. It smells of hay and mildew. You don't mind. You've slept in worse places. Graveyards, goat pens once, even in the rafters of a burnt-down church. Turnips not here to warm your feet. You miss him already. You wake at dawn, stiff, cold, hungry.
You boil roots in your tin pot. Add a strip of dried apple. It tastes like bark and hope. You drink it anyway. Then you walk, because there's always another village, another child burning, another fire to put out with nothing but Herb's hands and the fragile promise that maybe this time it'll be enough. The path ahead twists like a sleeping serpent through the woods muddy and veined with rivulets from last night's storm. Your boots squelch with every step, the leather threatening to split at the heel. You carry your satchel high on your back, nowless for balance and more because the last village's pigs chased you for the dried berries tucked inside. You haven't eaten since the hard bread. Your stomach complains in a voice louder than most patients, but you're used to discomfort. It's your constant companion. The next village doesn't appear on any map. You reach it by following a trail of faint smoke and the smell of wet moss mixed with boiled cabbage. You cross a shallow stream by balancing on a log slick with moss. One misstep and you're soup, but your arms steady you. They always do. You arrive just before noon. The sun tries to break through the cloud cover, failing valiantly. They spot you immediately. A shepherd boy whistles once, then vanishes into the nearest doorway. Moments later, shutters slam. A goat bleats in confusion. The air stiffens. You walk slowly, deliberately. Hood down, palms visible satchel, gently bouncing against your spine. No sudden movements. You learned that long ago. You pause near the communal well. Let them gather. They always do. And they do. 3 men, 2 women, and 1 old crone with a milky eye and a walking stick that's probably seen more years than the village itself. Who sent you? One man asks. Suspicion thick in his throat. No one, you reply. I walk. I help where I can. You a priest? Asks the old crone. No. A wizard? No. She squints. Heretic. You shake your head. Just a healer, they murmur. The word itself carries weight. In some towns, healer means savior. In others, it means witch that hasn't been burned yet. Historians still debate whether medieval folk healers were respected members of their communities or tolerated outcasts. The truth, you're both. A paradox wrapped in a woolen cloak and the smell of vinegar-soaked sage. The woman steps forward. My sister has a cough, she says. Deep, wet, won't leave. She's started coughing blood. You nod. Take me. She leads you through narrow alleys of damp stone and hanging laundry, the colours dull and frayed. The house is modest, a single room, low ceiling, everything wood and soot and old cloth. The patient lies curled on a straw mat, face pale, lips flecked red. Her breath comes in ragged waves. The smell tells you what you need to know before you even kneel. Lung rot, maybe even consumption. You've seen it too many times. A stubborn illness, slow and cruel. You unpack your tools. Not scalpels, those are for city physicians with shiny tools and cold fingers. Yours are humbler. A small mortar, a jar of dried licorice root, a strip of linen, and a flask of honeyed vinegar. You work silently. Brew a strong tea of horehound and hyssop. Crush garlic to make a compress. You hum a soft tune while the herb steepone your mother used to sing when she ground fever few by candlelight. You're not sure it helps the patient, but it keeps your hands steady. The sister watches every move. She's been like this for weeks, she whispers. The priest said it's punishment. Priests say a lot of things. She looks at you like you just spat in the font. You don't flinch. You help the sick woman sit up. She drinks the tea, slowly wincing at the bitterness. You place the garlic compress on her chest, secure it with cloth. Her eyes flutter. She leans back, breath a little steadier. You'll need to do this 3 times a day, you tell the sister, and burn juniper when she sleeps. It keeps the air clean. The sister nods. You leave before dusk, no coin exchanged, just a small pouch of barley and a single boiled egg. You thank them. You always do. Outside, the villagers pretend not to stare. A child peers at you from behind a rain barrel. You catch her eye. Wink. She smiles, then ducks. You walk out the way you came. The clouds hang low and your stomach grumbles at the egg bouncing in your bag. You'll eat when you find a dry place. 2 hours later, you crouch beneath a ruined stone arch that once held up a chapel wall. It's shelter enough. You eat the egg, slowly savouring it like a king's feast. The barley will stretch for 2 days if you grind it into gruel. You watch the rain fall just outside your makeshift shelter. It drums softly on the stone, a rhythm you've come to find comforting. You think back to the woman. She'll probably live. Maybe. If the cough doesn't turn cruel again. You remember others. A boy whose leg you set with willow bark and prayer. A knight whose wounds you packed with honey and lost anyway. A girl with fits who spoke in rhymes, said you had shadows in your chest. She was probably right. There's a story you once heard of a healer who could cure anything but everyone he saved forgot his name. You wonder if that's a blessing. You shift in your cloak, pull it tighter. The fire you didn't light flickers in your imagination. The patient you left breathes softly in your memory. And you close your eyes, let the rain sing and drift into a sleep that smells faintly of smoked garlic and forgotten songs. The sun wakes you with a blade of light across your eyes, sharp, narrow, and wholly unwelcome. Your back is stiff from the stone, your legs tangled in a half-wet cloak, and your mouth tastes like dried barley and dreams. But you're alive. You're always alive. That's more than can be said for many of your patients. You stretch bones, popping like twigs in fire. Your fingers fumble for your satchel, checking each item by touch alone. Mortar, pestle, clove oil, a shriveled root that looks suspiciously like a toe, but isn't probably. Everything's there. You set off again. No destination, just a direction. East feels lucky today. A few hours later, your luck runs out. It starts with shouting harsh voices carried on the wind. Then the unmistakable metallic clash of armor. You flatten yourself against a hedgerow, peering between the leaves. A small band of soldiers is dragging a boy, maybe 12, by the collar. One kicks him in the side. Another holds a cloth to his bleeding head. Caught stealing from the cart, one says. Little rat. Should have cut his hand off, says another. Make an example. They don't see you. They ride off after tossing the boy into the mud like garbage. You wait, still, silent. Then you move. He's not dead yet. You roll him gently onto his back. His breath is shallow. His eyes flutter but don't focus. You glance around. No one's watching. So you work. You clean the wound on his head with rainwater and apple vinegar. Bind it with the cleanest cloth you have left. It's a crude fix, but it holds. You mix a paste of yarrow and wild thyme, tuck it under his tongue and whisper something you haven't said in years. Hold on. He doesn't answer.
but he breathes. You build a small fire and settle in beside him. The forest is quiet here, broken only by the occasional bird call and the wind in the leaves. Historians still argue whether medieval healers often took in strays, wounded soldiers, orphaned children, wayward souls. You don't need scholars to tell you the answer. Sometimes a healer doesn't get to choose who comes to them. They just arrive, broken, bleeding, and breathing barely. By nightfall the boy stirs, his lips crack open. You're not a priest. No. You're not a soldier. Definitely not. He blinks. What are you? You pause thinking, then answer with a shrug. Someone who didn't like seeing you bleed. He stares at the fire for a long time, then whispers, "Thank you." You nod. Break the last of your barley cake in half. Hand him the bigger piece. He eats like he's never tasted food. He stays with you for 2 days. Doesn't speak much, just watches. You show him how to grind herbs, how to boil bark without turning it bitter. He asks if you're a wizard. You say no, but you don't tell him you've heard that one before. On the 3rd morning, he's strong enough to walk. You point him toward a market town a day's walk north. Say your name is something else you advise. Don't tell them where you've been. He nods, eyes wide. Will I see you again? Doubt it. He turns to go, then hesitates. You smell like garlic and frogs, he says. You smile. That's how you know I'm good at my job. He laughs a short high bark of sound and disappears into the mist. You watch until you can't anymore. Then you walk. Later that evening, you arrive at a village perched on a hill, nestled beside a crumbling chapel and a field of sickly crops. They don't look happy to see you. They rarely do. An old man limps toward you. You, the healer. You nod. Good, he says. The cows are dying. You blink. The cows. He shrugs. If you can fix people, you can fix cows. Right. You suppose it's not the worst logic. Healing is healing. And you've worked on worse patients. One cow had a belly full of gravel. Another had been cursed, or so the owner claimed. It turned out to be indigestion and a small leather shoe. You follow him to the pasture, where a wheezing brown cow lies on its sides, heaving eyes glassy. You kneel beside her, placing a hand gently on her flank. She's dying. Probably won't make the night. You look up. She's old and tired. She's all I've got. You sigh. I can try something, you say. You do. You boil nettles, mix in powdered charcoal and a little honey. You lift her head and pour it slowly past her lips. She swallows barely. You rub her side, whisper nothing words into the evening. She doesn't rise, but she breathes easier. You set a lantern beside her and leave it glowing. That night, the man brings you a loaf of black bread and a lump of cheese wrapped in wax paper. Payment, he grunts. You accept. It's more than most give. You sleep in his barn. The straw itches. Mice squeak near your feet. You dream of hoofbeats and wide eyes and a boy who said thank you. And in the morning, you find the cow standing. Not well, not fast, but standing. The man doesn't say anything, just nods. And for you, that's worth more than a cathedral's bells. You shoulder your bag, walk again. There's always someone, sick, bleeding, afraid, and somehow, always there's you. You arrive in a new town just as the bells begin to toll not for mass, but for mourning. A funeral procession winds through the square, a line of veiled women and hollow-eyed men following a cart draped in sackcloth. Atop it lies a boy, maybe 10 skin, waxy pale arms crossed stiffly over his chest. Someone throws a handful of wilted lavender. It lands short. A dog whines in the distance. You lower your hood. Keep walking. No one notices you. Not yet. You find a spot near the edge of the market to sit beside a dry fountain and a stall with fly-bitten apples. You unpack your wares slowly. Glass bottles, clay jars,
bundles of dried herbs tied with string. You arrange them carefully, not because you expect anyone to buy, but because order calms your mind. Eventually they come. A young woman first, eyes red from crying, voice brittle. My father's chest won't stop rattling. Then an older voice, gruff. My wife won't eat, thinks she's cursed. A child next, no coin, just a chicken feather and an open wound. You clean it, wrap it, and tell him to keep the feather. You have enough of those already. By mid-afternoon you've treated 5 people and earned a small wedge of cheese, a wooden comb, and something someone swears is ambergris. You're pretty sure it's just wax. But you don't complain. The old saying holds true. A good healer doesn't ask what he's paid, only who walks away. The local priest arrives just before dusk. He doesn't speak at first, just watches from the far side of the square, robes flapping in the wind. When he finally approaches, his steps are deliberate. You're meddling, he says. I'm healing, you reply. He squints. With powders, leaves, muck. The Lord heals, you distract. I give them something to believe in. So do I. You don't answer. Neither does he. The silence between you stretches like a rope in the gallows breeze. Historians still argue whether folk healers and clergy were allies or enemies in the medieval world. Sometimes both. Sometimes neither. You've seen priests lay hands beside you at sickbeds. You've also seen them light the torches when your kind was blamed for the illness you failed to cure. This one doesn't light a torch, but he does issue a warning. Don't sell hope where you can't deliver it. People remember. You nod. So do I. That night you sleep in a stable. The straw smells fresher than usual. The horse eyes you warily but doesn't kick. You count that as a win. You think about the boy in the cart. Wonder if he could have been saved. Probably not. But maybe. You never met him. And that's the curse of your trade. You don't always get the chance. Just the aftermath. In the morning, you're approached by a woman wrapped in grief and expensive wool. Her brooch is silver. Her posture is proud. Her voice trembles only once. My husband is sick, and I've tried everything. You know what she means. She's tried the priest, the apothecary, the bloodletters, the leeches, the prayers, and now out of options she turns to the one person her peers warn her to avoid. You. She doesn't bring you into the house. She brings you around the back, through the servant's door. You don't comment. You're used to it. The man lies in bed, drenched in sweat. His skin is blotched red and grey. His tongue cracks when he speaks. You check his pulse. Faint. His eyes are clouded, fevered. You open your satchel. Mix something fast-crushed blackberry leaf willow bark, a thread of licorice root boiled into a poultice. You apply it to his chest, then to his wrists. You whisper not a prayer, not quite, but the kind of words that sound old and soft enough to matter. The woman watches from the doorway. Will he live? She asks. I don't know. She nods. Will you try? Yes. That's always been the bargain. You never promise. You only try. You sit by his side for hours. Sponge his face. Hum songs from your mother's voice, long buried but never fully gone. You light a sprig of rosemary. The smoke curls gently toward the rafters. He breathes easier, just slightly. By sunset, the blotches are fading. He asks for water. The woman weeps. You let her. She offers coin. You shake your head. She insists. You take half. Outside, the priest watches again. You nod at him this time. He doesn't nod back. You pass a child playing with a bundle of twigs shaped like a man. He points and whispers, That's the leaf, doctor. Mama says he's magic. You smile just a little. Magic, no. But sometimes you're close enough to fake it. You leave the village that evening. The road ahead is soft with fresh rain. You walk slowly, savouring the quiet. Your journal waits in your cloak. You open it beneath a willow tree, press your thumb into the next page, and leave a small green smudge-crushed nettle and rosemary. No words, just the mark. You don't always need ink to remember. You're walking again, always walking. Your feet know the rhythm now, heel, ball, toe, squish. The road winds between hedgerows and crumbling stone fences through farmland where scarecrows outnumber farmers. You pass a rusted plough half buried in the weeds and a pair of sheep that watch you with bored suspicion. The sky is a low grey lid. Your satchel feels heavier today, not from weight but from questions. You'd helped a man breathe again yesterday, but will he still be breathing tomorrow? You try not to let your mind chase those thoughts. They're like smoke no use, trying to grab them. Instead, you focus on the path, the curve of the road, the next village. It appears like all the others, thatched roofs, smoking chimneys, chickens in charge. But there's something off. No children, no dogs, no sound. You pass a cottage where the windows are shuttered tight even though it's barely midday. You pass another door wide open, untouched meal still steaming on the table. Then you smell it. Sweet. Wrong. Familiar. Death. You don't hesitate. You walk toward the center of town where a few figures gather in a tight cluster near a well. One turns at the sound of your boots. It's a woman, her apron stained and her eyes wide with red. "You're not the priest," she says. "No." She stares a moment longer, then steps aside. You see the body slumped near the well. A young man. His skin is blotched purple and black, his lips dry, his limbs rigid. You've seen this before. Plague. Not the Black Death, not yet, but something close, something cruel. You kneel. Check for breath. There is none. You stand. "I can't help him." But the others, the woman asks. "My son Hare's coughing." You pause. Maybe. She leads you quickly, frantically through winding alleys to a cottage that smells of thyme and sickness. Inside, a boy, maybe 7, lies on a straw mat. His eyes flutter. His lips are cracked. He breathes in gulps like the air itself is trying to leave him. You unpack your satchel. Yarrow, horehound, dried cherry bark. You chew a strip yourself, crush another into water, have him sip it, drop by drop. You set garlic cloves at the door, not because they work, but because people believe they do. Sometimes belief is the stronger medicine. You place a warm stone at his feet to keep the blood moving. You stay the night, alternating between caring for the boy and boiling cloths in water to lay across his chest. The mother barely sleeps, sitting at his side, eyes glassy. You make her drink too, just in case. Historians still argue whether medieval folk healers knew how infection spread. You don't know the term bacteria, but you know the air has moods. That sickness moves like mist, that it clings to some and skips others, that fire and herbs and isolation sometimes help and sometimes don't. By morning, the boy is still alive. You help him sit up. He blinks at you. Your bag smells like old soup. You smile. "That's because it is old soup," he laughs. "It's weak, but it's real." The mother clutches your hands like she might break them. "Thank you," she says, voice cracking. You nod. Pack your things. But you know it's not over. Not yet. You leave the cottage to find a group waiting for you, not grateful villagers, angry ones. "He's the one brought the sickness," someone shouts. "I saw him touch the dead boy." He walks from village to village like death on legs. You raise your hands, calm, steady. "I didn't bring it." But it's too late. The fear is thicker than the plague, and fear is contagious. A rock hits your arm, not hard, but enough. Then another. Closer. The woman you helped tries to step in front of you, but someone yanks her back. The boy screams. You don't run. Running only proves guilt. You walk. A third rock grazes your ear. You keep walking. Eventually the shouts fade. The village disappears behind you. Your arm bleeds a little, but you ignore it. You stop near a stream, wash the wound, Tie it with a strip of cloth that once belonged to a patient who survived a winter fever. You told yourself you kept it for luck. So far, it hasn't worked. You don't write anything in your journal that night. You just sit under an oak tree and watch the stars blink through the leaves. You wonder if they're blinking at you, or winking, or closing their eyes on purpose. The wind rustles the grass. A night bird calls. You hum a soft tune, an old song, no words, just sound. And you whisper, not to the gods, not to the sky, but to the earth beneath you, I'm still trying. And for tonight at least, that is enough. The days blur. You walk, you treat, you're chased off, you're thanked, you're ignored. You sleep in stables under carts in the lee of gravestones. You eat whatever is handed to you, mostly roots, dried beans, and the occasional pity onion. Your boots are more patch than leather. Your robe smells like every village you've passed through and every fire you've crouched beside. Still you walk. It's not heroism, it's inertia. You're a wheel that forgot how to stop spinning. The next village welcomes you with cautious relief. They've sent for help, but no one's come. Their healer died in the spring fever took her while she was grinding clove buds for another man's cough. The town hasn't been the same since. We've been waiting, the midwife tells you. But truthfully, we didn't expect anyone to come. You nod. That makes two of us. She smiles. She's old but sturdy fingers stained with herbs and birth blood, the kind of woman who's seen too much to fear a little dirt or death. She leads you to the cottage of a woman in labour. Complicated labour. The air inside is thick, the fire's too hot. The woman on the straw pallet is flushed and gripping the blanket like it's the edge of the world. You kneel beside her. Check her pulse, her breath, her belly. You glance at the midwife. She shakes her head. It's not moving. You ask for hot water, more cloth, a strong tea nettle raspberry leaf, a bit of dried plum. You speak calmly, even when your hands are shaking. You've never delivered a child before. But the midwife is watching. She knows you're improvising. The mother screams. The walls seem to hum with it. You press on her abdomen, gently, firmly. You whisper. She screams again. Hours pass. You lose track of time. There's only sweat, steam, and then a sound. Not from the mother, from the child. A cry, wet and ragged, but real. You lift the baby. It's breathing. It's small, but it's breathing. The midwife exhales hard, then bursts into laughter. You lucky son of a goat, she says, wiping her face. You hand the baby to the mother. She cradles it weakly, lips trembling. You check her again. She's exhausted, feverish. But she'll live. You sit against the wall covered in blood that isn't yours. You don't move for a long time. That night, the midwife insists you stay in her home. I have spare straw, she says, and a half jar of plum wine. You've earned both. You accept. She talks as she pours. I've met your kind before. Quiet folk. Old souls. You don't stay long, but when you leave, people sleep easier. You raise the cup. To sleeping easier. She grins. To the ones who never stop walking. The fire crackles. The wine is sour but warm. The bed is scratchy but soft. You sleep deeper than you have in weeks. When you wake, the midwife is gone, but she's left you bread, a clean cloth, and a small wrapped bundle. Inside is a root, dark, gnarled and rare. Mandrake. You stare at it a long time, then carefully tuck it into your satchel. Later that morning, as you walk the edge of the village, a man calls to you. My son, he limps. Can you help? You crouch. Check the boy's legs. One is shorter. Not by much, but enough to trip him over roots and cobblestones. You take out a knife. Carve a piece of willow bark into a thin wedge, slide it into the heel of his shoe. Try now, you say. The boy walks, still awkward, but steadier. The father shakes your hand. Never seen a priest do that. I'm not a priest. Good. You leave the village with a full satchel and a heart that feels just for todayless hollow. But the road doesn't let you bask long. At sunset you meet a rider, black cloak, hooded, face shadowed. He blocks your path, doesn't speak. Then, you healed a woman in Marsh Hollow. Yes, you saved a merchant's son from fever. Yes, you gave mandrake to a soldier. Numb. I was given mandrake. He leans closer. Careful. People talk. And when healers gather too much fame, the fires come. Then he rides away. No threat, no warning. Just the facts delivered like an old debt being called in.